Hello and welcome to Because School Means More, the podcast where we explore what true inclusion looks like in schools and how we can make it a reality. Each episode will share real stories, practical strategies and insights from schools that are leading the way in inclusive education. Whether you're an educator, a parent or someone passionate about inclusion, this podcast is for you. Everyone is welcome here. Because School Means More is brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. My name's Jo Wilkinson and I'm the Inclusion Partnership Manager and podcast host. I'm joined by some co-hosts and guests for each episode. Our mission is to create real change by building an inclusion movement, a network of schools and organisations committed to inclusive relationships and inclusive provision for every child. Join us as we break down barriers, share success stories and work together to build schools where everyone belongs.
Because school means more.
So let's talk all things youth voice. Phil, an important piece of work for us. I think we've done quite a lot previously around capturing school voice, particularly through things like our podcast episodes, but also through the ongoing work. You've talked very much about co-production and that three-way relationship. Just talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if any, educational entity, organisation is going to be, really inclusive and really effective, I will see it as three parts of a triangle where you've got the school, you've got the parents, and you've got the students as well. And those three things coming together, I think, are really, really important. And you're right, we've done some really great podcasts and we've spotlighted some really great things that are going on in schools. So I'm really excited about this one focus on youth voice, because that input from our students across all age groups is going to be really, really important to dovetail with the strategies that we're talking about and the great bits of practice that we're talking about, or even just for us as leaders, and to get school leaders to reflect on interventions and strategies that we're putting in place, and actually where does that sit from a student lens as well. So to hear that and build that into what we're doing, for me, is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the Inclusion Charter and our 10 principles around inclusive relationships and inclusive provision, it was really good for us to share that with the young people and hear their understanding of what that means, but just to get their perspectives really around how are we ensuring that they feel that sense of belonging at school, and are we actively listening and hearing what their needs are, and what else could we do to support them as schools. So let's listen to a few little clips, shall we? So let's start with belonging, because I think that's a key word that we use, and it was definitely something that we spoke to a lot of young people about to capture some of their ideas. So here's a few clips that we can hear.
It's like we could have a heart-to-heart chat and you would understand me, instead of sending me down to student support or not dealing with that matter, because I entrusted you with something personal. And instead of just ignoring it and making me feel overlooked, you could just make me feel like, hey, you know what, I can actually hear you,
Because my year group is like a safe space where I'm free to talk and I can be listened to as well.
I think what was really nice about that clip was that young person was talking about having that mutual respect and that relationship with the teacher, so that they could feel genuinely heard and they could trust that teacher to be able to share things and feel supported effectively to overcome whatever those challenges are.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be honest, Jo, just by listening to that and letting it sink in, I'm almost questioning myself, because we live busy lives in schools. Schools are very, very busy places. And it was interesting to see that phraseology of, just go to student services, where actually that young person saying, I am entrusting you with a piece of information that I want to engage with you about, and you're then almost deafing me off. And it's a difficult balance in schools because colleagues sometimes are busy. So actually, it's how do we then create that time to be that genuine active listener and be engaged within what that young person wants to tell us. And that's a really delicate balance. But obviously, from the youth voice perspective, that's a really important thing for us to focus on.
And that was something that came across from a lot of the young people when we summarised some of the notes and some of the written materials that they produced from the events that we attended, was that genuine listening and active listening was really important. Let's have a listen to another clip then from another young person talking about belonging.
I think, in my opinion, it means having a personal connection with the place, whether that be with the people or maybe the environment you're in, and that includes both students and staff. They both have a responsibility to make other students and staff feel welcome. I think that belonging is more than the makeup of an environment. It's more than having a containment of different shapes and sizes and colours and people with different needs. It's more about how you tailor your approach in order to accommodate those different people.
So I think from those clips, Phil, it's also important to recognise the diverse makeup of the city. And I think our young people were really eloquent about how they spoke about that and how they understood the need for schools to recognise the communities that they're within and the cultures that they're serving.
I think one thing I really liked about it, it was really great to recognise the diversity, but I think taking that a little step forward, it was really wonderful what one of the young people said about that, schools, the makeup of schools is of people who are completely different and they've got completely different makeups. And actually from a student perspective, how the school accommodates and supports all of those different people with all of their different needs is what makes it truly inclusive.
Great. Let's listen to, I think we've got a couple more clips of other young people talking about their perspective around feeling welcomed at school.
You feel like this is the right place, like you belong there, like it's like your place that you belong, that you just don't want to leave, but you know you eventually leave, but it is amazing you can stay at the time.
And isn't that a lovely clip just to hear a young person talking genuinely around belonging, ultimately meaning that you don't want to leave a place? And we all know that school is a part of your life and ultimately you end up leaving and hopefully it's equipped you to go to your next step and what that might be. But you talked really nicely, didn't you, about what we really mean by belonging?
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing to hear, and you can genuinely feel that young person feels that about their own school, and wouldn't it be great if every child felt like that?
And he had a lovely message for teachers as well, if we have a quick listen to that one. Have a listen.
Don't change. Be where you want to be and be the best that you can possibly give to a student.
So wise words again from our student there, talking about being the best that you can be. And hopefully that's inspired a few of our listeners.
Definitely.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more then around some of the other questions that we asked those young people. So we asked a lot of them to talk about a teacher. And this is the question that we've asked for other guests on our podcast. So to describe a teacher that has really made them feel safe and cared for. And we had some really lovely answers to that. And again, a lot of them talked about having that connection and that teacher really getting to know them as an individual, which is obviously really important to those young people to feel seen and heard. And I think one phrase that one young person talked about was being remembered, so that that teacher understands and knows who they are.
I definitely think, as we said earlier, it can be something as simple as just a teacher showing you a smile and just showing you that you are welcome and it's a happy environment.
That came up time and time again, didn't it? Where it's really important that we have got that positivity in the room, that we're welcoming young people, and the simplicity of a smile to meet and greet those young people. A lot of young people talked about that. That was definitely a recurring theme. Use the phrase "make the weather."
Yeah, and I think a lot of schools and a lot of school leaders, are reminding people all the time that, they make the weather. But it is a really, really important thing. And it's quite interesting from a kind of like a thread that comes through those videos, those clips of our young people, is actually what they're asking from staff working in schools potentially takes no talent. It doesn't take a lot of talent to smile, to be positive, to be an active listener, to be present. And it's really interesting that, there's lots of research out there, and, there's lots of people who have written books like Paul O'Connell about, he's made a career out of being really good at the things that don't require a lot of talent. So maybe that's those kind of things, that messaging that coming from our young people is that, it's worth investing in those things that actually you don't need to plan. It's not part of a lesson plan. Yeah. It's just part of you as you being a human being.
The other bit of youth voice work that we did was to interview some children that were in alternative provision, where potentially a mainstream setting hadn't worked for them for a variety of reasons. And we asked those young people to talk a little bit about their perspective of their experience in an alternative provision setting in comparison to their mainstream setting. And they were all really mature about their response to that. But let's have a listen to a couple of clips there.
I used to get told off a lot because of like walking around school. But the only reason why I wasn't in lessons as much is because I didn't get the help that I'm meant to be getting. I get more help here and support than actually the attention that I need, like learning, working and all that.
I think it's just the system that they work with, because I don't know, I'm a little bit more different to other people, so like I just take stuff differently. So like learning is a little bit harder for me, but the way that I like to learn is, I don't know, I like to have support next to me, because it's just stuff like, I've got support next to me that I'm able to do it. But say if I'm sat by myself and I've got no support or anything, then it's just really bad for me, because I end up going all silly and stuff like that. So it's just, I've got a certain way of like learning. What clicked for me was, there's barely anyone in the school. It's, you can be yourself and don't put an act on, because if you put an act on, then no one likes you. Yeah, I've never ever smiled about talking about school before.
Absolutely great listens. And I think a couple of interesting things for me, Joe, particularly one of those young people talking about they were better when they were getting the support that they felt that they needed. And I understand that the balances and the capacity with regards to, you know, providing support for young people. But for that young lady, she articulated really, really clearly that once the support was in place, things were working better for her. And it was quite interesting with the young man as well, talking about, didn't actually feel that the school was bad in any way. He just felt that the systems weren't actually right for him and the needs that he had.
And his learning style.
And for me, that's really, really fascinating, very mature as well for someone to say that in an interview.
Absolutely came across.
But definitely something worth our listeners contemplating with regards to their own systems and policies and practices. And, you know, I suppose if we go back to 2022 with Dave Whittaker, he talks about that flexible consistency. You know, is that something for our listeners to contemplate as well with regards to supporting all of our young people?
And what was lovely talking to those young people was hearing their love for where they're at now and how the AP setting has really helped them and the relationships that they've built. And we've got our podcast with Derby Pride Academy, where they talk about sort of regaining that sense of belonging and how do we re-establish that. And then the role really to play with those young people, to support them wherever possible, to get back into that mainstream environment. But what was really lovely was to hear both those young people talk about how they now enjoy school and that they're there day after day.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, prior to starting there, they were potentially a little bit against the idea or a little bit hesitant about it.
Yeah, and potentially some really, really challenging young people.
Yeah.
But actually are now very positive about receiving education.
And the opportunity for them to be themselves as well, which really came across. So some really nice content that we got from that visit and interviewing those young people.
Really powerful.
Okay, another question that we asked was for young people to talk about 3 words to describe an inclusive school. And it's been something we've asked on many a podcast, but also through things like our network meetings and conferencing. And I think this was an interesting one for us to see the language and hear the language that they used and to overlay it with what we hear from our school voice, to really think through around what do we really mean by an inclusive school. And again, we had some really lovely responses to that. So we'll listen to a few clips and summarise that afterwards.
The 3 words I would use to describe an inclusive school, I think the first one would be valued, because I think it's really important that a school feels like it's interested in you and that the pupil feels like they have someone that's got their back, really. Opportunities, that would be my second word, because I feel like while you don't have to know everything that you're going to do straight away in life, I think having some sort of direction, having somebody to help you follow that direction and get you included is really helpful. And I think the third word would be diverse, because not only knowing about the cultures all around the world and the different kinds of people you'll meet in life, it's also about understanding the people in your school environment and being able to get on and understand and even help other people is really, really important.
I think for me, inclusive school is diverse diverse as not in terms of just cultures and backgrounds, but different people who think differently but are able to get along. And kind when you make, as young people, we're more likely to mess up and we're going to make mistakes, but school not just showing you punishment, rather a way forward and support. And I also think and safe. I think that's important for all schools. Being safe, the feeling of being safe is really, really imperative in schools, because if you're not feeling safe, you're not going to be able to learn, you're not going to be able to make friendships, you're not going to be able to actually fit in a community.
So some more wise words there, I think, from those young people. And again, the language that they used was very consistent with what we've also heard from School Voice. So it was reassuring that it does join up. It was lovely that the young people recognised themselves, the diversity of the community. A lot of them talked about the need to feel safe, which is obviously really important. And that great word, kind, cropped up time and time again. So I loved visiting a range of youth groups to capture that youth voice and to hear their wise words and their thoughts. Excited now for us to meet Oliwia, who is our new youth mayor for Derby City, who can hear some of these thoughts and ideas and add her own ideas and take this important piece of work forwards. Okay, so we've shared, I think, a little bit with you around the context of the work that we're doing. And very much it would be good, first of all, just to hear a little bit about your role as youth mayor and what does that involve for the city?
So I was elected as youth mayor for the 2026-2027 term, and my role consists of going to various events, hearing youth voices and acting on young people's feedback, and turning it into real result.
Quite a big task there then, and quite a big responsibility. What do you think the key to that then is to ensure that those voices are heard?
A key to that, I think, is, directly hearing from the young people. There's no point of me saying what I think should be changed if I'm doing it for the young people in Derby. Just through forms and through direct conversation, hearing what young people need.
What do you think is really important in a school to ensure every young person has that sense of belonging?
I think finding your communities, like often schools have after school clubs, so you can get to know your teachers there more and find friends. So I think something really key to that is finding those communities that you feel like you belong to. I think even those little small things that cost absolutely nothing, like smiling, just greeting, actually mean a lot to people. It embodies a positive atmosphere and environment in the school.
So could you then describe a teacher that you think has really made you feel that connection and that support and you've had that trusted relationship with? And just describe that teacher for us.
Yeah, he's no longer at my school, but he was just really joyful and he was a really positive person. He always motivated people and motivated them, but then also not put pressure on them, but especially with my GCSE year, motivated us enough to actually get revising. And he was just, I think that provided that welcoming atmosphere that made people know that you can talk to him.
We sometimes use the phrase in education, you make the weather.
Yeah.
So I would challenge my staff with regards to, you make the weather. And actually what I'm picking up from you, Oliwia, you're talking about that teacher that's had a real great impact on you. You've talked about them being joyful. I love that word, about them being joyful and about being positive. And for me, I've made that real quick connection between that person was genuinely making the weather as soon as they've greeted you, whether that be at the door, whether that be during the lesson. And I think sometimes it's those simple things that I think we forget within this sector. What makes lessons good? What makes lessons effective from yours and young people's points of view?
I think the teacher just not being passive sometimes. They just read off the PowerPoint, and I think making it more interactive and making it seem like it's coming from them would be a lot more useful and more engaging for students.
Great.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion and really important.
Yes.
So if you were to describe an inclusive school in 3 words.
Enjoyable, inclusive, and maybe even inspiring.
Nice.
I feel like being inspired in a school setting is that really key element, because that age group between 11 and 16 when you're in secondary school is key moments of your development, and being inspired and finding out what you want to do, I think, is really important.
Great. So you've got the role for the next 12 months.
Yes.
But you fast forward into 12 months' time then, what difference would you like to have made as part of your role?
My 3 key topic areas: mental health, safety, and opportunity. Opportunity being about careers and people having the young people having the ability to find out what they want to do without any pressure. Safety. So I think a lot of people, young people and adults, have experienced, for example, walking in the dark and just feeling unsafe. So I would want to collaborate with bus providers and the council to try and improve lighting and highlight key areas that people feel most unsafe. And then, as I mentioned before, mental health.
Okay, so this is a story.
I got bullied when I was in year 8, and I didn't tell anyone. No one knew. But it really took a toll on my mental health. Without going into detail. And yeah, I just wanted to help people. I think that support is really important, and it's just about trying.
The problem with this is trying to get people to talk when they don't want to talk,
because I know firsthand how intimidating it can be to tell someone that you're struggling and this is a problem in your life.
To a certain extent, do you feel that maybe staff in school miss that?
Maybe. However, the point, I think if it was now, they'd catch it.
Have you got any questions you want to ask us around inclusion?
So what specifically have both of you done to help schools in Derby and help them be more inclusive?
We grew as an organisation back in 2022 with a government initiative called Opportunity Areas, and there was a little bit of extra funding that came into this region in particular because some of the data around Derby at that point wasn't particularly very good. I'm being quite honest about that, particularly in around suspensions and permanent exclusions of young people. So we originally set up as a kind of as a small group to try and work with schools to think about how we could reduce permanent exclusions. And very quickly we realised that actually this was, permanent exclusions was really just an outcome of a number of things that went on in schools. So we kind of then started to launch the inclusion movement, and we tried to work with all schools, both primary, secondary, special, AP, to share not only just a common philosophy about inclusion, but also there is some great things that go on in schools. And I think sometimes schools aren't seen positively, when actually I would say in every school there are some great things that are going on.
Absolutely.
So actually it's our moral duty to try and pull those things together to try and share and also co-educate each other with regards to how we can be more inclusive. So that then kind of manifested itself in our first inclusion charter, where we got the schools to sign up to a charter, which was this is almost I'm not going to say a formula, but this is a set of principles that would be really, really good within schools. We're at a really beautiful position at this point in time where every single school in Derby City has signed up to it. And our kind of role is to continue to working with schools and I will say challenging schools, because I think we are in that safe space to do that, about how we can continue to be more inclusive. And I think that's where, yet again, your role here of trying to represent the student body and student voice is really, really important, because it's an important part of the jigsaw.
As Phil said, a huge celebration that every school has now signed the Inclusion Charter. I think what we'd say in terms of what we've achieved and where we're at is 100% of schools in the city know what we mean by an inclusive school and by that word inclusion, because it means lots of different things to different people. But we've got that common code of practice now and that consistent language across the city around inclusive relationships and inclusive provision and what that should look like.
Could you say one thing that you would like all pupils to take away from school when they leave?
I think that positive attitude, and that feeling of being inspired, I think that's what drives you to do stuff. Yeah, like there's a quote from my favorite movie that says, "Don't think, just do." So basically, take every opportunity you can get.
Great.
I've got no doubt that you will inspire a lot of young people by sharing that sort of a message. So, and without a doubt, you've got a bright future ahead of you. So good luck for this next year.
Thank you.
In your role. Thank you for going above and beyond and committing to this role during a busy time in your education journey. So hopefully you'll gain a lot from it as well and learn a lot from it. But I know that you're going to give a lot to it as well.
Yeah.
So a huge thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you, and thanks for being brave.
Well done.
So yeah, we've got a certificate for you, so we'll get a photograph at the end, of course. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about all things inclusion from a young person's perspective.
No worries.
That's a wrap for this episode of Because School Means More, brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, ideas and inspiration to help make schools more inclusive for everyone. Real change happens when we work together. So, if you're inspired by what you heard today, we'd love for you to be part of the inclusion movement. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this episode with colleagues and connect with the Inclusion Partnership. Thanks for listening.
Because school means more.